The Oklahoma Board of Agriculture this week refused to consider emergency rules governing new or expanding poultry operations in the state. As a result, residents in northeastern Oklahoma with concerns about the booming poultry industry will have to look to the legislature to resolve issues which some claim are threatening their health and livelihoods.
Jennifer Owen has owned property in Cherokee County for decades. While she loves the land, she's not happy about the large poultry operations that have moved into the area.
It pollutes the air. You can't go outside. You can't open your windows. They're sucking the water table down drastically.
Owen was among several northeastern Oklahoma residents who attended a meeting of the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry this week to weigh in on a set of proposed rules that would have required new or expanding poultry operations to maintain setbacks from homes, schools, and streams. But State Agriculture Secretary Jim Reese says after overwhelming blowback from almost everyone involved, the board decided to defer the issue to the legislature.
I'm very disappointed that we were unable to arrive at consensus. It is a very important but highly contentious issue that we worked very hard to address. At the same time, we are happy to punt it to the legislature. We will happily implement whatever legislation is passed and signed by the governor at some time in the future.
While the emergency rules were not adopted, a temporary moratorium on new or expanding large-scale operations will remain in place for the time being.
Our suspension of PFOs over 30,000 birds will be in place until the legislature acts, or until May 31st.
Attorney David Page believes that was one of the few good things to come out of the meeting.
There's been an increased proliferation of poultry houses in northeastern Oklahoma. And so that suspension, that moratorium of allowing for new permits for these houses is a good thing.
In fact, there's been a boom in poultry operations in northeastern Oklahoma in the past 18 months, according to landowner Lauren Frederick.
For example, I met a fellow in Delaware County that within 1 mile of his home, they put in 80 chicken houses.
All that activity isn't sitting well with residents like Frederick and Owen.
The poultry operations are like a cancer. Once they set in, they immediately begin destroying, of course, people's lives and communities. This is affecting everyone's drinking water in northeastern Oklahoma.
And Frederick believes it's going to get worse if something isn't done.
It is going to affect our more populated drinking supplies, and it certainly is going to affect the next generations and our generations. There are people getting sick already. I'm completely of the thinking that when everybody realizes what's at stake and what's going on, everybody's going to help get this shut down, because with what they've already done, they're devastating land, air, water, health.
Frederick says his opposition to the rules stems from his belief that they were not strict enough and would not have stopped other poultry operations that the board had already approved.
There's such a density of chicken houses from their unprotecting of humans and taking the objectives of chickens and chicken producers over humans to that whole area.
Other groups also objected to the proposed rules, but for a different reason, believing they were too stringent. The Oklahoma Farm Bureau, in a letter to Ag Secretary Reese, said emergency rules drafted without initial and considerable industry and stakeholder input are likely to have unintended consequences and be unsatisfactory to all parties, and went on to say Oklahoma Farm Bureau is committed to working with our member poultry growers, the poultry companies, other agricultural organizations, interested parties, and the department in the upcoming legislative session to determine what constitutes appropriate setbacks for poultry operations so that poultry growers and their neighbors can enjoy the use of their property. Meanwhile, the Oklahoma Cattlemen's Association sent a letter to Reese stating the poultry industry has committed to working with all interested parties at this time, as well as during the upcoming legislative session, to consider appropriate laws and regulations, including possible setbacks, and urged the board to honor this commitment and work with the poultry industry as well as other animal industries that could be affected by potential legislative or regulatory action. Meanwhile, some landowners aren't waiting for the legislature to act. Attorney David Page accuses the Agriculture Department of being lax in enforcing current regulations regarding poultry operations.
Our concern is that there's existing laws and regulations available to the Department of Agriculture that allow them to avoid the problems we're seeing. If they would use the regulations they have in place, they could protect the water quality and the water quantity in this area.
And Page says he plans to file a lawsuit against the agency on behalf of landowners within the next few weeks.